The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to our webinar hosted by Ledgeview Partners. For those that have been with us on our webinars in the past, I want to say welcome back. And for all you newcomers, it's nice to virtually meet you. Thank you for giving us 30 minutes of your day to learn about creating a sales process that will really drive results. My name's Chad Collette. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Ledgeview Partners. We're a business and technology consulting company who partners with organizations to transform your sales, marketing, and customer service operations and processes that are supported by core technologies like customer relationship management or CRM and marketing automation. Now, before I introduce our presenter, I have just a couple quick housekeeping items to cover. First off, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand after the live session. All attendees will receive a follow-up email from me after the webinar is complete with a link to access the presentation. And we encourage you to share this within your company and also your professional network. To ensure the best audio quality, we have everybody on listen-only mode. But if you have a question, we really encourage you to ask that. We have a full slate today, but we'll make sure to follow up offline and answer every question that's submitted today. You can use the question pane in your GoToWebinar control panel. Now that we have those details out of the way, like I said, we have a full agenda, and let's get focused on your sales process. Organizations know that a well-defined sales process is key to successfully managing their sales team and their pipeline. Yet many companies have ineffective, incomplete, non-existent sales process or sales process that people just don't follow. Our presenter today, Greg Dubb with Ledgeview Partners, let me tell you, from a sales process perspective, Greg has seen it all over the years and is ready to provide you with insight, tips, best practices, and a lot more that will really help you drive results. Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Chad, and thank you all for attending. As Chad said, we have a pretty full agenda with lots of content that we hope will help you better understand the importance of a sales process. So with that, I'm going to jump right into it. Our agenda today, we're going to talk about the importance of a sales process to give you maybe a little confirmation of why you've spent lots of money or lots of time developing that. We'll talk about the benefits of a good sales process. We will also take a look at how do we gauge success in a sales process. So what are the key elements that we really need to make sure we have? We'll take a look at the various stages of the sales process and talk about what's too few, what's too many, and give you some understanding there. And then we'll go over some of the common mistakes and hopefully offer up some tips to help you get around those and make it a little bit better for your organization. So the importance of a sales process. We have taken some time to put together a lot of interesting stats and facts about a sales process. And I think a good place to start is to give you a definition of a sales process. So it's really a repeatable set of steps for your sales team. And although you look at it from your prospect and your customer, you want them to be engaged through this, it's really a repeatable set of steps to help you be successful when you engage with a customer or prospect. So that is a sales process defined. Best-in-class companies were far more likely than their industry average counterparts, in other words, their competitors. So the leaders in any industry, they're more apt to have a broadly adopted sales process. So the successful companies and the ones you want to be like, you can bet that they have a great sales process. 44% of executives think their organization is not effective at managing their sales process. So while your counterparts and competitors have a sales process, they're not always sure that it's being followed. And I think a lot of what we'll cover today will really reinforce that and help you understand why you need to make sure that it is being followed. There's an 18% difference in revenue growth between companies that define a formalized sales process and companies that don't. So if you're looking for an increase in revenue, I would say one of the first places you should look is your sales process, because I think most CEOs and vice presidents of sales would love to have 18% revenue difference than other companies. So some of the key benefits of a sales process. And this is a defined sales process. So it's consistent steps that align with the way your buyers buy. And we're going to talk about that a lot. So while a sales process is really for you and your sales organization, we want to take into consideration your customers or buyers. So let's make sure that we include them when we think of a sales process. So as we define the activities that move that prospect or that customer through the buying process, you're really able to improve your likelihood to close that deal and have consistent, qualification of opportunities. So that's what a really good defined sales process will do for you. Some of the benefits. So repeatable execution, and you may wonder, why is that so important? And when I look at this, it's really, you want to have everyone on your team marching toward success, and you want to have them all going about it the same way. So you want to make sure that they understand the need to qualify that prospect as you move it through. And we're going to talk about what that means, but qualifying happens a lot through a good sales process. So you want your sales team to understand what resources they have to leverage with each stage. So as we talk about moving from one stage of a sales process to another, there's certain things you need to accomplish to move that to the next stage. And we want to make sure that you understand what is available to you to aid in that process. And if you look at it, it's not only the salesperson responsibility, but many people within your organization to help them move to those various stages. And when you do this, it's going to be much more efficient and less frustrating. So when I think of efficiencies and less frustrating, you're going to have reps that are happy, they're selling, and because they're being efficient, you're probably going to see an increase. And I think maybe that's some of that 18% increase in revenue that we talked about. So you're moving more people through your sales stage. The salespeople are happy, and as a result, you're maybe closing 4 to 5 more deals per quarter, per month, whatever it is. So efficiency and less frustration for your reps. And honestly, as a sales manager, anything you can do to create less frustration with your organization is going to be a key benefit. And then finally, onboarding new reps. This is a big challenge for companies that don't have a defined sales process. So as Chad said, we work with a lot of customers in consulting, and one of the things we hear, or some of the things we hear are, yeah, we have a great sales process, but it's not really documented. Our owner started the company and he's been really successful, so we send them out on a couple calls with him. They learn to talk about our products, and that really is our process. Or, well, we know where we have to go to do this, and we know where we have to go to move this along, but we don't really have it documented. And I'll just tell you, that creates a nightmare when you are onboarding new employees. So another really good reason to have it defined. Consistent evaluation. So as any sales manager would know, you have lots of people in your organization selling, and you need to be able to evaluate them. So having a real good process really helps you in that evaluation. So you can take a look at your individual's performance and give it a really objective comparison to how the other people on your sales team are doing. That way you can find out who your top performers are and maybe mirror more of what they're doing, and look at those who aren't performing so well and see if there's some gaps in how they're applying the process. And then forecasting and pipeline management. I mean, those are huge components to any company's success. So if you have a good process, your pipeline is going to be real, and it's going to help you forecast whether it's quarterly, monthly, year over year. You'll be able to do it if you have what's required. You build it in. It simplifies the customer's decision. So again, I said the sales process isn't just about your organization or your salespeople, but let's take a look at the customer. So we want to make sure our reps are better suited to guide the buyer down that process of buying. So it helps them lay out the roadmap for how we get to closing that sale. If it's good, it's going to show your value and what makes you better than your competitors. What are those differentiating factors between your product and theirs? What's better about your services versus theirs? And then finally, it's going to create confidence and ease with your buyer. And that's what we want to have. We want to have a buyer or a customer who likes doing business with us because we make it easy for them and we get rid of all the stuff that's in between. It's going to drive long-term results for sure. So again, as your reps are more efficient and more productive, they're going to sell more. You're going to have better results. And again, as we talked, if we're taking the customer into consideration here and we build a process that helps them through it, we're going to have happier customers. We're going to have more customers, so we're going to get new, so we'll have organic growth. But then we're also going to retain the ones that we've already established, and this will help us. And obviously, all of that leads to increased profitability. So a good, successful sales process is defined, and it's the key to successfully managing your sales force and your sales pipeline. So if you said, hey, we're going to start up a sales organization today and we're going to be selling, this product or service, I would start with some real key components, and one of those would be defining that process. And then I think that's right up there with creating your hiring personas, identifying your customers. That all becomes part of that process. So some of the elements that make a process good is really mirroring the buying process. It's a buyer's world, and you need to understand what makes your customers tick. So understanding that and putting that into your process will help you be more successful. And the buyers are very, very complex now. It used to be they wanted a product or service. They may come by and visit you and look around and maybe go to a competitor and look around and then make a decision. But now they have everything at their fingertips with the internet. So you need to understand that they're coming into the decision process much later. So when they get to you, they're already pretty close to making a decision, and odds are they've looked at your product and compared it to others. So they're very, very informed. Your process should be simple. You want to have stages that are worthwhile and meaningful. So they're milestones that you need to accomplish to go from the beginning to create that opportunity and ultimately move to a close. So let's keep it simple and make sure that if we're moving it, it's a significant move in the right direction. We don't just want to move it to a different stage if it's not significant. Each stage of the process should be defined and validated by your customers. So you want to set up the process or the shift from one stage to another with something that's real important, and you should be validating that with your customer. So I don't know how many times I've heard stories of a salesperson, and I've probably done it myself, where you think you have a deal and it's going to close because you've talked to the customer and everything seems real good, but you get there and for whatever reason you don't close. Maybe you didn't have the right decision makers identified. Maybe they didn't have the budget. So you don't want to do this by gut. You want to have it defined and validated. And then you really must communicate and understand and train your salespeople to understand the importance of each step and accomplishing each function within that step to move it along. Clear roles and responsibilities. So I think our selling process has become very, very complicated. There's many people involved. There's marketing, and I've done webinars where marketing is saying we're giving you all the qualified leads you need and you should be selling more, and sales is saying, boy, I don't know, I'm not seeing that. So when you create this sales process, make sure you're engaging with all the right departments and understanding how they need to be involved and when you need to bring them into the process. And those roles and responsibilities by department, you need to have buy-in and you need to know where to go. And if you do this and do it right, it's going to create accountability throughout the cycle. And it's also great to just have some good checkpoints, because if you're running a deal and you involve finance and they're looking at some things, they may identify something that makes you go back and say, hey, we need to do a little more homework on this before we move it forward. So engage with multiple departments as needed, and make sure everyone understands their role. Qualification throughout the process. Real simply, everything starts out good usually, because if you didn't have some type of connection in the beginning with your customer and then with you as the seller, you probably wouldn't be going through the process, but that doesn't mean that things can't happen along the way. So it's important to really qualify throughout the process. Have something defined up front that gets them into your pipeline as a prospect or a customer looking for an additional product or service. Do that qualification up front and continue to do it. Make sure that you have checkpoints for your sales reps to look and make sure that this opportunity is still the right one for you. And you know what? It's going to happen, and you might as well plan for it. So have an exit strategy. If we get halfway through a deal and we see a red flag, let's call it out, see if we can get around it. But if not, don't be afraid to pull out of it, because if you keep pushing that deal through that process, you are not being inefficient. You're wasting time, and by the time you get there, you'll have just been spinning your wheels for maybe the last 3 or 4 phases of your process, because you're afraid to exit if it made sense. So make sure you have that accounted for in your process, but make sure your people understand it's okay to call out a deal as, hey, I don't think this is going to work, and move on. Probably one of the most important things that I think people need to understand is that your process is going to be fluid. It needs to evolve with your customers. It needs to evolve with your industry. It needs to evolve with your company's capabilities and with your products. So if you have a sales process that you spent a lot of money on 5 years ago, and you're still following that same exact process, you might want to take a look at it, because it should be constantly evolving, because it is a very, very changing dynamics out there that can really, if you're not accounting for it, it can really throw you for a loop. So make sure you're looking at it all the time. And support your process with tools and resources. Have your reps understand when they get to a certain point, here are 10 things you need to do, and don't just, again, wing it. Let's document them for them and help them understand what those 10 things are, and if they need help, where they can go for that. So make sure they know the resources and the tools available to them. And some of the tools that we utilize and I think are really great, that everyone should have, an opportunity qualifier. So have what makes a real opportunity valid, and whether that's all decision makers defined. Maybe it's, do they have the budget? Do we have a time frame? Whatever makes your opportunity, in your opinion and based on your research, valid, make sure we're capturing all of that to say this is a legitimate opportunity. Pre-call checklist. This may be new to you, but just document and give them a cheat sheet to help them follow your process. So if the sales process is a test and the ultimate prize is closing the deal, give them a cheat sheet that has all the answers on it so you can help them navigate through it and be successful. And then give them selling tools. A good example would be a case study. So if you're moving through the process and you get to a point where you have a good feeling and you agreed that this is a good opportunity for you and your buyer is interested, have case studies available. So if you have a construction company you're working with and you've had a lot of success in the construction area, go ahead and get a case study and share it with them so that you give that buyer a good feeling about dealing with you. And that's something all companies probably have, are success stories or case studies, testimonials. So leverage those when it makes sense. Coaching is a huge, huge part of a process that I really advocate for. You can have the best, most expensive sales process in the world, and if you're not following it and you're not making your sales team adhere to it, it's not going to work. So inspect and reinforce the usage of the process and tools. So actually hold your team accountable to what you want to, and the best way to do that is to actually sit in with them and make sure they're following that process. Another thing you can do is, listening to them interact with their customers or asking them questions if they're following the process. That's one great way. But any good sales process should be supported by a CRM. So create the ability to go in and audit to see how they're following that sales process. And I guarantee you, if you look at your most successful people and audit their results, they're following your process. And the people that are struggling, they're probably falling short somewhere. So take the time to understand that. So some of the key things when looking at stages for a sales process. How many steps or stages should you have? And I would say there's good information and we'll give you some guidelines, but ultimately do what's best for your organization and base that on what you understand from some of your key customer wins, some of your best customers. Look at that and help that guide you through how many steps or stages you should have. The majority are between 4 and 8. And again, too few is probably a sign that you're not really describing or accounting for everything in that process. So if you're looking and you have, 4, maybe 5, that might not be enough. So take a look. And again, if you have too many, then your process becomes hard to manage. And I also would guess that it becomes very hard for your people to follow. So make sure it's not too little and it's not too many. The ideal number is between 4 and 6. This number really surprised me because I don't know if I've seen too many processes that are less than 6 steps. And I have a couple examples, but again, this is what the ideal number is, and you need to look at what's best for your organization when you decide how many you should have. But each one should show significant progress in moving that sale, from opening to closing the deal. And you need to have that specific criteria to accomplish the movement from one stage to another. So make sure that you have that. And again, look at your buyer, look at your sales team, look at your products, and then use that to really define how many stages you should have. And then regardless of the number of stages you end up with or what your process looks like, make sure you're using CRM to back it up. So you can spend all kinds of time creating the process, but I would encourage you to do that, and then the very next step should be make sure your CRM platform enforces it. And a little bit of a story here. We talk a lot about when reps have a great opportunity or they're close to making a sale, they want to come and sit down and tell you about it as their sales manager. Well, one thing that we practice here is we don't want to hear about that opportunity until it's actually put in CRM. So if I have a rep come and tell me about something, the first thing I ask them is, did you enter this into CRM and are you following the process? And if the answer is no, I ask them to go back and do it and then tell me about it, because if it's not in CRM, it doesn't exist. So here's an example of a sales process that I found, and you'll see, there's a couple different areas. There's the swim lane on the left, so that's how you move from each stage, and then you have your support tools, and then you have kind of the skills and competencies that you're going to follow. So I'll just dive into a couple of these real quick. The first one is you're going to assess the account and the potential. So you have some criteria that you're going to look at, and based on that, you're going to say, yeah, this is a good opportunity for us to pursue. Let's go forward. Or maybe the answer is no, we don't have everything we need here, so let's go back and get that and make sure it's a good opportunity. So I really like that step. Investigate the business. There's tons of data out there, so gather all of that data and understand who your customer is, and use that to help you go through this process. And if you go down just a couple, you'll see engage the prospect. And what I coach to is if you've done a good job investigating the business and you have good data, you can make that engaging the prospect so much easier by relating to their business. And I'll go back to the case study. If I have a agriculture or a construction company that I'm trying to sell to, and I have some history of working in that industry, I know that going in, so I'm going to leverage that to my fullest ability to help them become more comfortable with me as we move through the process. Another example, so this one is pretty easy to follow. So your prospect makes contact, it's qualified, or it's not, and if it's not qualified, the transaction ends. But if it is qualified, you set the appointment, you determine the requirements, there's some presentation that you give, and then it's, are the needs met? And if the needs are met, it's address any objections or any final things, and you close the sale. If the needs aren't met, then you talk about, can we negotiate? Is there anything more we can do? And if there's not, then it obviously goes to no and ends the transaction. So pretty easy to follow through here. But one thing I'll call out, if I was creating this process, anytime I come to a no end transaction, I want to understand that. And odds are I'm going to recycle that back to marketing so we can keep marketing to them, because just because it's a no now, it doesn't mean it can't become a yes later down the road. So be careful when you end your process, because you may want to look at moving it back and starting your process over. So some common mistakes and tips. Too many steps are open to interpretation. So when you're in a step, make sure you're clearly defining and that the salespeople understand everything that needs to be done there. Because I guarantee if you leave it loose or open to interpretation, they're going to skip things. So don't do that. One and done approach, one size does not fit all. So make sure that your sales process is fluid, and apply some good solid metrics to make sure it's working the way it should and you're getting the results. And then sales methodology. So there's all kinds of them out there, from to Sandler to whoever you subscribe to. Just be aware that things change. So sometimes those models may be a little antiquated, and it's okay if you're aware of multiple sales processes and you want to pick and choose a few things that you like from each one. That's okay to do, because it's your process. So create it the way you want. We talked about the importance of coaching. So by not having a coaching program, you could really have a great process, but it isn't working. So you need to have a good sales coach that believes in your process, and you need to support them in that process so they can do what they need to do to manage that process and promote it throughout the organization. And your coaching should really have key elements of that process, and that's what you coach to. Sales management solely develops the sales process. So what this is saying is collaborate with everyone who's going to be a part of that process, and make sure that their voice is heard. And if you do that, you'll have buy-in through all the departments and various stages as you engage throughout. So what can you do if you have a sales process and you want to know if it's working? Here's a little assessment. So how hard or easy are you to buy from? What do customers say about this and how you sell? So understand that and use that to improve your process, and don't be afraid to close the sale, but then do some post-sale activity to understand what your customer thought of dealing with you. So what do your salespeople say? So ask them. If they're not following it, maybe you have a problem. So get some input and make sure that their input is part of the process, so they have buy-in. And then always look at your best performers. They're doing a good job for a reason. So tap into that and understand it, and use those best practices to help others. Does your sales process direct and empower your sellers to align with prospects and customers? Are you sure that you're showing value and differentiation? How's your process working with forecasting? And then do you have tools? So ask yourself these questions. And then finally, how does CRM facilitate the selling process? And I really hope that the answer for you all is that it's a major part of it, and it really drives your process. If not, you may need to look into that and do some evaluating. So if you make a mistake, don't hesitate to correct it. And that really leads to, it's okay to ask for help. not everyone is an expert at creating sales process. So that's where Ledgeview can really help out. We have sales consulting and sales process and operations, sales performance, sales coaching and training, team development. And maybe you just don't want to tackle all that. So we also have outsourcing in the areas of lead generation, account management, and campaign management. So if you have any of those needs, feel free to reach out and we can certainly help you. And then finally, one of our customers said the way Ledgeview Partners takes care of their customers is phenomenal. And when I see that, I think, well, maybe that means we have a good sales process, but I will tell you that we're always, following our own advice. Even though she was happy here, we want to make sure she stays happy, so we're always looking to improve. And with that, here's how you can get a hold of me with any questions, our website, and I thank you all for your attendance today. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chad.
Thanks a lot, Greg. Really appreciate all that great information and the presentation. For everyone on the call, I want to thank you for joining us today. If you missed my intro, we did record today's presentation, and we'll be sending everybody a link to access the webinar on demand. As a special kind of treat in the email for me as well are 2 links to 2 new infographics that we just created regarding sales process that I think you'll find very interesting and that you can share as well with your company and resources. We encourage you to visit our website at ledgevviewpartners.com for additional on-demand resources. We cover a lot of things from sales, marketing, customer service, CRM, and much, much more. We've got more webinars coming up. You can always see what we have on the docket on our news and events page at ledgevviewpartners.com. And we got a couple more coming up next week. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope you had some great takeaways and make it a great day. Thank you.